let's talk about various widgets in Android. So now let's talk about the widgets. I have an important widget here, which is the toggle button widget. As you might have seen, a widget which actually has a green button. If you click on it, it actually fills up the color in it. And if you again click back on it, it actually deactivates the button for you. So let's take an example for it. I'll go to new. I'll say new Android application project. And I say toggle button sample. Here I choose an API. Click on next, click on next, click on next, finish it up. Once I do that, it should get automatically loaded up for it. So let's start here. So I have already created an activity here. In the activity, I have a relative layout. Under the relative layout, I have text view. So I'll just remove this text view here. Here I can just see, if you all can see here, this widget, particular widget, toggle button. Can you all see that? Ashish comes up with a question here. What is a cursor? Cursor is something which is used in database interactions, Ashish. So when we'll be covering database interaction, we'll be talking about cursors. Either I can just drag and drop it here onto the screen, which is not the way that I would prefer all of you to do. So here I'll just delete it up and I'll create my own. I say toggle button, give it a height attribute. I say height as say wrap content. Layout height is the attribute that I'll be using here. I say wrap content. Once I'm done with this, I also define the width attribute. I say fill. I'll just wrap it to content because it will just stretch up the toggle button here. I say text on. I say if it is on, I should display the text on. All right. And similarly, if it is off, I should display the message off. Now see the graphical representation to it. Here I have a button which is in the off state at present. So I'll just run this up for all of you to see how the toggle button behaves. So I open up the simulator here. So it has got the launched the activity. Now if I click on here, it automatically changes the text to on, and as you can see, the color gets filled here. Similarly, off, on, off, on. So I can do this for as many number of times as I do. And what I can also do is, I can also check in my application whether this particular button is on or off. So here I'll create a new item here. I say private, say toggle button here. I say button toggle. Create this, instantiate this with the help of the XML here. I say r.id. I think I haven't given it an ID yet, so I'll just give it to it. I say ID. I say ++ ID / I say toggle. Now it gets referenced from the main activity. I say toggle. All right. And here I can just say button toggle dot is checked or not. So if it is checked, I say it is on. If it is not, if I say it is off. Toggle can be done only with button, or the radio buttons can also have toggle features. So the radio buttons, as you all might have known, are the mutually exclusive things. So if I click on anyone, I actually click on any particular radio button, which is not the case with the checkboxes. So you can click on and off with the checkboxes, but you cannot do so with the radio buttons. For radio buttons, if you want to do switching between the various views on, off, select one out of three and all, then you have to place those radio buttons in a radio group. I'll just cover it up for you, Avinash. I'll cover it up. I got it. I got it. Similar to the radio buttons, we are similar to the widgets like toggle button. We also have checkboxes and radio button, which I'll be just covering now. If any person has any doubts with the button toggle example, you can just try it on the chat window. I'll be covering it up for you, Avinash. I'll be covering the checkboxes and radio buttons as well. Any person having any doubts, you can just try it onto the chat window so I can just see to it what is the problem that you feel. So this is an example of a typical toggle button that we have in Android. Similar to a toggle button, we also have checkboxes. So the checkboxes allows the user to select one or more options from a set of values. So you should present each checkbox option in a vertical list. So you can, I'll just show you an example for it. Here, as I have created a toggle button here, instead of the toggle button, what I'll do here is I'll just create a checkbox instead of the toggle button here. So what I do here is I'll just remove it up, say change it to a checkbox, keep these values. I don't actually use these attributes in a toggle checkbox here. Give it an ID. I say check. All right. Once I'm done with this, I go to the main activity, create a checkbox object here. I say button check, and then I check this up with, I reference it up with the ID. Ashish has asked me a question here. Can we add components from activity? Ashish, can you just elaborate a little what exactly is that you want to know here? How we can add components to an activity, is that you want to know here? It's like you're talking about runtime execution of the activities, right? Yes, we can also do that, Ashish. So for the time being, I'm just keeping it to layout.xml, but we can also do a runtime execution of the various checkboxes, as you might be aware of, because you also have been working here in TCS. So let me just tell you, if I can create an object here, so I can also create an object like new here. I hope you might be aware with this. Here I give it a this. So I can also create a new object to it, and then I can add it up to my layout. Ashish, we can also do it like that. So here I have the button check. On the button check, what I do here is on checked change listener, I'll create a new unchecked change listener here. Do the necessary imports here. Once I'm done with it, so it will give me a value here. So I'll just use the complete. I'll just copy it up, the toast message here, so that I can use it here instead of typing it up. So once I do that, I go to the toggle button wherein I'm actually creating a list checkbox here, do a control V here, and I'll just output the value of the check, that is if the checkbox is checked or not. So this is what I'm just doing here. So I'll say here the checkbox is added up to this particular string. All right, so what I have done here is I have created a checkbox. So here let's go to the main activity main.xml. Here you can see the checkbox here. I haven't given it a name yet, so I'll just give it a text here. I say check status. Once I do that, you might be seeing here some text here which says check status, and a box beneath, a box just to the left of it, as you can see here to the left of it. So let's create, now try to run this particular sample here. So I have just used the same sample that I was using for the toggle button. I have just made some changes into the toggle button example and created a checkbox for it. So here you have the check status. So if I click on here, it should say the checkbox is true, that is, it is checked. If I click on it again, it says the checkbox is false, so it is not selected. Then similar to the checkboxes, we also have radio buttons. So if I'm using a single radio button, it allows the users to select one option from a set. So radio buttons are actually mutually exclusive. That is, you can select only one out of it. So here you can see I have a checkbox, I have a radio group, I have a example, complete example for all. So let's see an example here. So I've created a checkbox already. All right, now let's create a radio button here. I give all the attributes here. I'll just shift end it. I'll just change the ID and all. I say ID is radio now. All right. So here what I have done is I've added a radio button. I say radio status. All right. But as you can see, I have created a relative layout. So in relative layout, the elements are actually not assigned one after the other. It is with the linear layout that we have the vertical or orientation or horizontal orientation. So here what I'll do is I'll place this item below the checkbox. All right. So once I do that, go to the graphical representation. You can see here a checkbox and a radio button. Do a run as here. Similar to the checkbox, I actually forgot to add the check radio button here. So I'll just do that till the time it is loading up. Ashish is asking me a question. So if we have more than one checkbox, we can have multiple checkboxes, Ashish. We have the references of all those various checkboxes, and we can set the on check change listener to all the checkboxes and get their status, whether it is true or false. Or what you can also do is you can just click. I'll just show you how you can also do that. You can also check with the object itself. So if I say button check dot is checked, this is the value which actually returns me the same field which I'm actually getting by the click listener. Here I'll be creating a radio button now. I say radio BTN. I say radio button equal to radio button. I do a typecasting. Then I do a find view by ID. And I find view by ID of the radio button here. Similar to the checkbox, I can also click set the change listener here. I say new on check change listener. And once I'm done with this, I can raise a simple toast here. And the toast should say the radio box is checked. All right. So let's take a look at the sample here. And I do a run as Android applications. Here I have the example with me. Let it just run. So if I click on the radio button, it says the radio box is true. I cannot click back on it, as you all might be aware of with the help with the radio buttons. What we have the process with the radio buttons. Now let's change this complete activity main.xml. Ashish has come up with a question here. What is Git application context? So if I'm running an application onto any device, I have a particular runtime or the context of the application. So whenever I'm using some activity, if I say I have, instead of say, I'll just show it to you. Instead of the Git application context here, I can also show main activity.this. All right. So this is like, I can also pass in the applications context, or I can also pass in the activities context to it. Ashish, I guess. Yes, Ashish. So this is how we can do it. So I had shown you how we'll be running it. Now I'll be adding up multiple radio buttons in a radio group. So below that, what I'll do is I'll just create a radio group here. Ashish is saying no, the get application context is not the first activity in the manifest file. It is just the complete applications context, Ashish. Don't confuse it with the particular activity, because for the activity I have shown you how we do it. But if you want to have the complete applications context to run anything, so you have the application context for it. It is always better to use the activities context, because as soon as the activity gets destroyed, so you can your context also gets destroyed. But if you're using the get application context, the application will get destroyed only when the complete application gets destroyed. So you can decide among this particular behavior in this particular manner, Ashish. So here I have created a radio group. I say the radio group has a particular height. I say wrap content. It has a particular width. I say fill parent, and it has to get an ID. I say our radio group. All right, and I'll just do a control X here, place it here, because I need this radio button in the radio group. And this particular attribute, what I'll do here is I'll just control X, because this I need to have the radio button beneath the checkbox. Now I don't want the radio button beneath the checkbox. I need to have the radio group. As you can see, this is a radio group now, so I can add multiple radio buttons to the radio group. Which I'll just do, keep adding. Here you can see I have created 3 radio buttons here: radio status, radio status, radio status. So I'll just check them to 1 and 2, radio status 1, radio status 2, and radio status 3. So once I'm done with this, I go to the main activity. Here I have placed the on-check change listener onto the radio button, which I'll remove because I don't need it now. And here I create a radio group. Just name it up R group. Copy it up. Call it radio group. The ID has to be radio group now. And I say R group dot set I say on click listener, I create a new on click listener. Do an import here, do a switch case. I guess this won't work here. So I'll just see what is the exact method that we can utilize here. I already created a sample for all of you here. So if I do a run as here, I have to actually find those referenced IDs of each particular radio button, and then only I can utilize in my application. But now I can select all the three. Like if I want to select, I can select any one of the three here. As you can see, any three, any two. I'll just see what is happening here. So when I do a run here, I think I have chosen the wrong project here. I do a run as. Now I have the various radio buttons, so I can choose any particular radio button out of the lot. So that is the advantage that radio groups give to me. Since I have 10 number of radio buttons in the radio group, so if I have checked say 10, then I can reference those from the XML and then get their check status checked and then utilize in my application. I hope this is clear to everyone, how we can use the radio group, how we can use the radio buttons, how we can use the checkboxes. All right then. So this is an example of checkboxes and radio buttons that I had for all of you here. Ashish, as I told you, if we are using a radio group here, all right, so we can have the utilize the radio groups in a manner that we can have multiple selections from the radio group. That is what I told you from the very beginning, that this is the difference between using a radio group individually and using it with a using a radio button and using it with a radio group. Then similar to the other things, we have also a widget, which is the spinner widget in Android. So spinners provide a quick way to select one value from a set. So in the default state, spinner shows its currently selected value. So let's take an example of a spinner here. So I'll use the similar example that I had for the list view here and just convert that example for the use of spinner. So now I have created list view. Instead of the list view, I'll be using a spinner now. I already have created a complete spinner example for all of you here. Once I have that done, I'll just show you what I have for you, all of you in store. Here you can see, you can think of a spinner as a drop down that you normally get in any application. All right, so I'll just go to the activity main here. I'll just open it up for all of you here. In the activity main, I have created linear layout. Under the linear layout, I have placed a text view which just says hello. Then I have placed a spinner here. So in the spinner, I have given it an ID, I have given it a width and a height attribute. Now if I go to the main activity, just open it for all of you here. Here I have placed a set content view to the main activity. Then I have created an array of cities, took the reference from the XML item, created an array adapter here, set the array adapter to the spinner, and set the once item selected listener onto the spinner and just raised a toast. Here you can see I have chosen a different layout with respect to spinner, which I chose for the list view. Let's see what this layout contains. As you can see, this is the checked text view type of layout here. So which gives me a style, which gives me a single line, which gives me a width attribute, it gives me the list item, it also gives me the mark you. So let's take an example here. So here I have an example of a spinner here. So let's just run it up again. So you can see here the current item that is selected in the list is New York. If I click on it, if I click on any particular item, it says Denver. The second item gets selected. If I say click on this, it gets Los Angeles. So this is how we can utilize a spinner in Android. This is one of the very important widgets, which is the drop-down widgets that we have in Android. So if any person wants to use a drop-down in their activity, they can utilize the spinner in their activity and just get their work done. I hope this is clear to everyone, how we use the spinner items in Android. You all can just try it onto the chat window so that I can just understand. So this is an example here of the spinner which says the various items and I can choose any one. So this is an example of a spinner here. Then you can also, what you can also do is you can customize a particular button that you want to look like in an application. So you can control exactly how your controls are styled using a theme that you can apply to your entire application. So if you want to truly redefine the appearance of your button, you can specify a custom background. So here I'll just show you an example how you can utilize the various key button press events onto any particular application. So I'll create a new example here. I say test button selector, choose an API here, click next, next, finish it up. Under the source file, I have the main activity. Go to the layout here. Here I have a text view. So what I'll do here is I will remove this text view, create a button here. All right, give it a height, give it the width. I'll use the layout height instead. I use it to wrap content. Then I have the width. I use it to wrap content. All right. Then I give it an ID. I say @+ ID / button. Now what I'm doing here is I'll be telling you how you can utilize the various button pressed events and how you can change the various drawables when you press any button in Android. So I'll just take a few images that I have for up. Here I have a few images. I'll just copy these images. Go to the project folder. Under the resources, drawable, I'll just paste it up. As you can see, these two buttons got added here. Now what I need is I need a selector for this particular item. So I need to create a new selector here. So I create a new, I go to other, go to an XML file I choose, create, click on next, and I say selector button. Click on finish. So I have already got the piece of code that is used here. So I'll just use the same one. Here I have to create a selector for it. So I'll just do that. Do a Control C here. Minimize it up. Do a V here. So what I have done here is I have created a selector item. So what a selector item does is if my if my button is pressed, so I have to display a similar. Ashish, as I told you, if I'm referring to any particular item in the XML, I actually assign an ID to it. So similarly, if my drawable button 2, this is the button 2, all right. So this is the normal drawable as the button should look like, but as soon as the button is pressed, I should change it to drawable 1. This is the button pressed event. So now what I need to do here is I need to assign the selector to the button. So I'll just go to the main.xml. I say background and I say @drawable, because that is the folder that I have created the selector in, and selector button. It is very important that you understand here that the drawable that is created here should be the selector that is created here should be placed under the drawable folder, because that is only when you'll be able to assign it to the background. So I'll do a run as Android application. Okay, it is actually giving me problems here with the button naming conventions, because it does not allow the naming to be like this. So I'll say button 1, button another. Do OK here, and the selector button has to be renamed because it has to be all in lowercase. I say selector button. Once I'm done with this, it should wipe off all these errors here. Now I should change the references for it. Button and button another. What is the problem here? Okay, now I have to change the name again. Once I do that, I think it should be good to go. It's again giving me some problem here. Okay, I think now it should work. Yes, got it, Ashish. All right, so now let's test it up, how the selectors work in Android. So if you want to change the various drawables, when you click on it, when it gets focused, you can use the various items now. So here, this is the normal button. If I press on it, it changes its background, as you can see. So this is the event that I have pressed it on. So as soon as the button is pressed, the drawable should change. So this is an example of a simple selector that we can utilize with the various buttons, and we can customize the buttons that we have.